You are watching Beyond the News. Like, comment, and subscribe.
I could not have you here and not ask about Sir P. This is really for TikTok now. You've listened to some of his videos also. I'm in Jamaica.
I know this. This is rubbish.
Wow.
It's rubbish. I've heard him. Yeah, I've seen it.
What about it is rubbish?
Well, a lot of it is rubbish.
Oh, okay.
And you know, I think I've been on it as well. In a
Style up the movement and the local YouTuber. The PIA survived full-scale attacks on the biggest artists them and walk with scratch-free. But the hubris of this man make him think him can reduce it. And we're going over here to the rubbish. We're going to talk about it, guy.
But our main source today, Sir P, he has a very different take.
Oh, does he?
He's suggesting that maybe this whole tough-on-crime image of Shields is more myth than reality.
Let's ignore the fact that Mark Shields take over, fly down like the white savior, take over before half of the year, and the murder still almost at 1700. Let's ignore that. Because the Wikipedia page says that the following year, murders fell 20%. See that on your screen? 20%. Which year was that? What did it drop to? 1340. By putting that in the Wikipedia, what I'm trying to say is that a Mark Shields responsible for the reduction. There will be no other reason to mention that unless you're trying to say that Mark Shields' presence in the JCF made murders drop from 1674 to 1340. But they only mention 1 year. How can somebody run from 2005 to 09 and you only talk about 1 year? I will tell you why. Because guess what happened in 2007? Murders went up to 1,584. Wikipedia page editing, Doppybot. Why never put that in there? Did Mark Shields lead the force? Was he not still in the JCF? It went back to 1,584. Call that 1,600. Call that 1,600, guy. That's why they didn't mention 07. Them tell you about 05 to 06. Then they tell you about 06 to 07. Because the entire Wikipedia page is nothing but PR for Mark Shields. So them give 1 year all-time reign. 1 year. That's like a footballer playing for Real Madrid for 10 years. And them say in 2005 he scored 34 goals. And then they mention no more year. That means they're not the more to go on. That means that them now have nothing more for brag about.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at someone who's been a bit of a controversial figure in Jamaica.
Oh, yeah?
Mark Shields, the former deputy commissioner of the Jamaican police force.
Right.
Now, you might know him as kind of like this tough-on-crime leader who made some, real headway.
Mm-hmm.
But our main source today, Sir P, he has a very different take.
Oh, does he?
He's suggesting that maybe this whole tough-on-crime image of Shields is more myth than reality.
Interesting. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's unpack that.
Okay.
So it's fascinating how Sir P really tries to kind of like dismantle this image of Shields as a highly effective crime fighter.
He does.
He says that Shields was actually like a pretty average officer back in the UK.
Right.
And ended up being promoted way beyond his qualifications when he joined the Jamaican Constabulary Force as deputy commissioner.
Huh. So promoted beyond his actual capabilities.
Yeah, let's dig into that a bit.
Okay.
So Shields came over to Jamaica from the UK, where he had the rank of chief superintendent. Mm-hmm.
So what's Sir P's problem with that?
Well, you see, a chief superintendent in the UK is more or less the same as a deputy superintendent in Jamaica.
Okay.
A much lower rank.
Oh, wow.
So in Sir P's eyes, Shields was basically bumped up way higher in the JCF than what his experience in the UK would usually allow for.
I see.
So this kind of raises the question, was he really qualified for this really important job?
Right.
Or was there something else going on?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Right.
Makes you think, if there's a tendency to overvalue expertise just because it's coming from outside, which is exactly what Sir P calls foreign worship.
Ah, I see.
The idea that Jamaica, sometimes ends up picking outsiders over their own qualified people. And he's using Shields as like the perfect example of this.
Right. And to back up his argument, he doesn't just stop at like comparing ranks. He actually points to some of these initiatives that were supposed to be Shields' big successes.
Oh, well, things like setting up CCTV systems and fingerprint databases.
Right. Okay.
But Sir P is saying these systems were either already in place before Shields even got there,
Right.
or they didn't really do much to change the crime rates.
So he's saying these so-called successes were more about looking good than actually getting results.
Exactly. He even goes as far as to call Shields overrated.
Really?
And says he was better at promoting himself than he was at actually fighting crime.
Oh, wow.
He says that the real work was being done by the Jamaican officers on the ground.
Right.
But Shields got all the credit because he was the foreigner.
That's pretty harsh.
It is.
So now you're probably thinking, is there any proof to back up these claims?
Well, he points to the crime stats from when Shields was in office.
Okay.
And those numbers paint a pretty grim picture.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So during Shields' time, which was from 2005 to 2009, there was a little dip in murders in 2006.
Yeah.
But then the rates just went through the roof.
Yep.
Like in 2007, there were a whopping 1,584 murders.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, Sir P really emphasizes that this period was the absolute worst 5-year period for crime in Jamaica's history.
Wow.
With murders hitting their peak in 3 out of the 4 years, Shields was in charge.
So is it fair to put all the blame for the rising crime rates just on Shields?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And we got to remember, just because two things happen around the same time doesn't mean one caused the other.
Right. Correlation doesn't equal causation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, Sir P does point out that murders actually went down after Shields left.
Interesting.
Which does make you wonder,
Yeah.
about how effective his leadership really was.
It does make you think, if maybe different policies or different strategies used after Shields was gone were actually better at dealing with crime. And this brings us right back to what Sir P was talking about with the foreign worship thing.
Yeah.
Was Shields maybe given more freedom or more credit than a Jamaican officer would have gotten in the same position? Even with the crime rates going up.
It's possible.
It really makes you wonder if his being a foreigner played a part in how people saw his work, even if the results weren't really there.
That's exactly what Sir P wants us to think about.
Yeah.
And to really drive home this point, he makes a pretty provocative comparison.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He compares Shields to Thomas Thistlewood.
Who's that?
This brutal English planter from way back in Jamaica's history.
Whoa, that's a pretty big jump.
I know, right?
How does Thistlewood, who lived like centuries ago, connect to Mark Shields and modern policing?
It's not so much about what they did specifically, but about a pattern that Sir P sees happening over and over again in Jamaica.
What's that?
This tendency to put foreigners, especially white foreigners, into positions of power and influence.
Right.
Sometimes even when they've done bad things or don't really have the qualifications.
So by comparing Shields to Thistlewood, Sir P's saying there's like a systemic bias in Jamaica.
Exactly.
This tendency to maybe unconsciously favor outsiders over local talent.
That's exactly his argument.
Wow.
And he suggests that this bias can have real consequences.
Right.
Not just in terms of who gets to be in charge, but also in how their actions and their performance are judged.
So he's asking us to really think about these historical power dynamics.
Yes.
And how they might still be affecting Jamaica today. This is getting really thought-provoking.
It is.
We've covered a lot, but there's still more to explore.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Sir P's analysis of Shields doesn't end there.
Definitely not.
He also looks at some of the things Shields said and did that he thinks reveal a deeper issue.
Interesting.
And this issue gets right to the heart of Sir P's whole critique of foreign worship.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
Stay tuned, because next time we're going to delve into how Sir P uses Shields' own words and actions to back up his argument.
Can't wait.
And what he sees as the potential fallout from all of this.
Okay, I'm ready for part 2. Sir P really focuses on this one incident that he thinks sums up this whole foreign worship thing perfectly.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
So Shields actually said that Jamaicans should get their news from international sources.
Really?
Like the BBC and CNN?
Yeah.
Instead of their own local Jamaican news outlets.
He really said that.
He did, and Sir P finds it super ironic.
I bet.
You have this foreigner basically saying Jamaican voices and perspectives don't matter.
Wow.
And that people should listen to outsiders instead.
It's like he's saying Jamaican news can't be trusted.
Exactly. Like it's not credible enough.
I can see why Sir P would have a problem with that.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
It plays right into this whole idea of putting foreign voices on a pedestal, even if it means ignoring local ones.
Exactly. It feeds into this idea that if it comes from outside Jamaica,
yeah,
it must be better or more reliable.
Right.
And it gets even more interesting when you bring in another aspect that NP mentions.
Okay, what's that?
Shields' wife.
Oh, here we go.
So Shields' wife is Jamaican.
Okay.
And she happens to be a very successful journalist. Now, Sir P isn't saying she's not talented or anything.
Right.
But he does raise a good point.
What's that?
He says that her success might be partly because of her husband's influence and connections.
So he's saying that being married to someone like Shields, this big shot foreigner, opened doors for her in the media that other Jamaican journalists might not have had access to.
That's the idea.
And so P's using this as another example of how foreign worship plays out.
Right.
It's not always just about who's qualified or who deserves it.
Yep.
It's about who has the power and the advantages that come with being connected to a foreigner.
It's like he's saying, even if it's not intentional, this whole dynamic can make things unfair.
Right.
Where local talent gets overlooked or people don't see how good they are.
This brings up a really tough question.
It does.
Is there this tendency in Jamaica to maybe, without even realizing it, favor outside perspectives? Or people connected to foreigners even when there are equally talented or even more talented people in the country?
It's a hard question to think about.
Is.
But Sir P's analysis definitely gets you thinking.
It does. And he doesn't shy away from making some pretty bold statements based on what he's seen.
Yeah, what else does he say?
He actually calls Shields the most overrated police in Jamaican history.
Wow.
And says that his time in the JCF actually made things worse for crime fighting.
Instead of better.
Yeah, that's a pretty harsh thing to say.
It is. So what makes him say that?
Well, Sir P argues that Shields' reputation is basically built on smoke and mirrors. He calls it a manufactured legacy.
Okay.
And says it's a result of this whole thing we've been talking about.
Right, this tendency to look up to foreign authority figures.
Yeah, even when they haven't really done anything to deserve it.
So he's basically saying Shields was all show and no substance.
Exactly.
That his being a foreigner was a big reason why he became so powerful.
Yeah.
And why people thought he was doing a good job, even if the results didn't back it up.
That's what he's saying.
And he goes on to say that this focus on foreigners and foreign expertise is actually a sign of a much bigger problem.
What's that?
What he calls an inferiority complex in Jamaican society.
Inferiority complex. That's a strong term.
It is.
What does he mean by that?
He's suggesting that there's this tendency to think that just because something comes from outside Jamaica, it must be better or more valuable.
Okay.
This can show up in all sorts of ways.
Like what?
From liking foreign products more to needing approval from international organizations.
Interesting.
And he's saying that this way of thinking can actually stop Jamaica from realizing its full potential.
So it's bigger than just Mark Shields.
Oh, yeah, much bigger.
It's about this whole societal mindset that Sir P thinks needs to change.
Exactly.
But how do you change something so ingrained?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, where do you even start?
Luckily, Sir P doesn't just point out the problem.
That's good.
He offers some really interesting ideas for how to move forward.
Okay.
He has suggestions for how Jamaica can get past this inferiority complex.
I see.
And start really appreciating what it has.
So we've been talking about Sir P's ideas about Mark Shields and this foreign worship thing in Jamaica, and it's all pretty thought-provoking.
It is.
So where do we go from here? What does Sir P think should happen?
Well, he says the first step is a change in how people think.
Okay.
He's saying Jamaicans need to get rid of this inferiority complex that he says is holding the country back.
So, like, stop looking to other countries for approval and focus on their own strengths.
Exactly. He says Jamaicans often try to find answers and solutions from outside sources when the expertise they need is already right there in Jamaica.
So basically believe in themselves more.
Yeah, it's about having faith in Jamaican capabilities.
This makes me think about something you mentioned earlier.
What's that?
The different words used to describe Jamaicans living abroad versus foreigners living in Jamaica.
Oh, right. Immigrants versus expats.
Yeah, Sir P sees that as part of this bigger problem, right?
Exactly. He said Jamaica needs to start seeing itself and its people with more confidence and self-respect.
Like like they're just as good as anyone else.
Exactly. Think about it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect another country to always be looking for leaders outside their own borders.
If they had qualified people within their own country?
Right.
That's a really good point.
It's like he's saying Jamaica needs a whole new approach to leadership and expertise.
Not just bringing in fewer foreign experts,
Right.
but really making sure local talent has a chance to shine.
Exactly. It's about creating a system where Jamaican expertise is valued, nurtured, and given the opportunity to grow.
And Jamaica has a history of being innovative and accomplished.
It does. Sir P's saying it's time for them to believe in themselves even more to really reach their full potential.
This is powerful stuff.
It is.
And it goes way beyond just Mark Shields.
It really does. It's about a whole cultural shift.
And that's what makes Sir P's ideas so interesting.
They're not just criticism.
Right.
It's like he's challenging Jamaicans to question their assumptions, to appreciate what they have, and to build a future where local talent is leading the way in every area.
This is a reminder that real progress starts from within.
Absolutely. And this message applies to more than just Jamaica.
I see that.
This idea of recognizing and celebrating your own talent
Yeah.
while still being open to learning from others is something that every society can benefit from.
Well, Sir P has given us a lot to think about today.
He has.
This deep dive has really made us question some things and brought up some big questions about how we value expertise and talent.
In Jamaica and everywhere else.
It's a complicated issue with no easy answers.
Yes.
But in the end, it's up to each of us to decide what we take away from this.
That's true.
Do we keep looking to others for solutions?
Yeah.
Or do we start really investing in and supporting the amazing potential that's already in our own communities?
That's the question Sir P leaves us with.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the legacy of Mark Shields and this idea of foreign worship, we want to know what you think.
Let's hear it.
What stood out to you? What resonated? Head over to our social media and share your thoughts with us.
We're listening.
Until next time, keep diving deep